Lucas Green rubbed his eyes tiredly, trying to focus on the dark road in front of him. The clock on the dashboard showed 10:30 in the evening. The phone vibrated. Lucy was calling. "Dad, are you coming soon?" Her daughter sounded anxious. Grandma was feeling sick again. Lucas gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I'm almost home, sweetheart. Did you give her the medicine?" "Yes, but—" Lucy trailed off. "Dad, we're down to the last of the pills. We'll have to buy more tomorrow." Lucas felt his insides shrink. He had the last $50 in his pocket, all he had left after paying the next bill for his treatment. "Don't worry, we'll figure something out," he tried to reassure his daughter, although he didn't know where to get the money. Suddenly, the headlights snatched the silhouette of an expensive car on the roadside out of the darkness. Emergency lights flashed in the darkness, and a woman stood next to the car trying to protect herself from the rain. Lucas slowed down. Fatigue and a desire to get home as soon as possible fought with his sense of duty. "Lucy, I'll call you back. There's someone stuck on the road." "Okay, Dad, just come back soon." Lucas stepped out into the pouring rain. An elegant woman of about 45 stood next to a luxury Mercedes, soaked to the skin. "Do you need help?" he asked, coming closer. The woman breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh, thank God. I've been standing here for an hour. My phone is dead and my car just stalled. My name is Lucas. I'm a car mechanic. Let's see what we can do." "Mia Wilson," the woman introduced herself. "I was trying to get to the hospital. My friend is dying there. And now I'm stuck in the middle of the road." Lucas opened the hood and quickly assessed the situation. The battery was completely dead. "I have the starting cables. We'll try to start it now." While he was working in the pouring rain, the phone rang. "Lucy." "Dad, Grandma is worse. She's suffocating." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. "I'm on my way. Call an ambulance now." Mia, who was standing nearby, heard the conversation. "Is something wrong?" "Everything's fine," Lucas replied briefly, although his hands were shaking as he connected the cables. "Try to start it." The Mercedes engine roared to life the first time. "How much do I owe you?" Mia reached for her purse. "Nothing." Lucas was already putting away the tools. "Just be careful on the road." "But," she started, but Lucas was already running to his pickup truck. Mia caught a glimpse of him wiping his face, wet with rain or perhaps tears, before he disappeared into the darkness. She didn't know that this chance encounter would change the lives of both of them. She didn't know that her husband, Robert Wilson, owner of the largest construction company in town, would soon make a decision that would change the fate of this family. Mia was sitting in the hospital corridor waiting for news about her friend's condition. She still couldn't forget the mechanic who had helped her on the road. Suddenly she heard a familiar voice from the next corridor. "We can't pay for the surgery right now." The mechanic's voice was trembling with despair. "But you don't understand. She needs urgent help." Mia cautiously peeked around the corner. Lucas was standing at the reception desk, his clothes still wet from the rain. The nurse looked at him sympathetically. "Mr. Green, I understand your situation, but we can't start treatment without a down payment. It's hospital policy." Lucy, who was standing next to her father, sobbed, "Dad, what will happen to Grandma? She can—" Lucas hugged his daughter. "Quiet, sweetheart. Everything will be fine. I'll think of something." Mia felt her heart clench. She remembered her own struggle with the disease 3 years ago. Back then, Robert was by her side, and she had money for the best treatment. "We need at least $5,000 to start treatment," the nurse explained. "The rest can be paid in installments." Lucas rubbed his tired face. "I have a house. Maybe I could—" "Dad, no." Lucy grabbed his arm. "What do you suggest?" Lucas asked quietly. "Watching Grandma die?" Mia felt tears welling up in her eyes. She took out her phone and dialed her husband's number. "Robert, darling," her voice trembled. "I need your help." "What's wrong?" Her husband sounded concerned. "I'm fine, but—" Mia told him about the accident on the road and what was happening in the hospital. "What do you want me to do?" Robert sounded skeptical. "We can't help every stranger." Mia felt anger boiling inside her. A stranger helped your wife on a deserted road an hour ago, refusing to pay, and now his mother may die because of the lack of some $5,000. There was silence on the phone. "Do you remember how you used to talk about your father?" Mia continued more softly. "About how he worked as a mechanic to put you through school, how you lived from paycheck to paycheck." This is different," Robert sighed. "How is it different? The fact that you were lucky enough to make it? Robert, we can help you. Just, just come and see for yourself." The doctor came out of the room and headed toward Lucas and Lucy. "Your mother's condition has stabilized," he said, "but without surgery, I'm afraid we have a week at most." Mia saw Lucas trying to hold back tears. "Maybe if we sell the car," he began. "Then how will you work?" Lucy hugged her father. "We'll figure something out, right?" Mia looked at them and remembered her own fight with cancer. Back then she thought her life was over, but she survived, and now maybe she can help others. "Robert," she said into the phone, "I know you don't like to interfere in other people's affairs, but sometimes fate gives us a chance to do something important, something that can change someone's life." She heard a long sigh in response. "Okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes, but I'm not promising anything." Mia smiled through her tears. Robert Wilson parked his black Bentley. He'd been putting off this visit for a week, but Mia's persistence finally won out. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" he asked Mia, who was sitting next to him. His wife looked at him reproachfully. "Robert, we've already talked about this. Just meet them." They came to the door. Muffled voices were coming from the house. "Lucy, dear, you have to eat," a woman's voice said. "Grandma, the doctor told you to lie down," a worried teenage voice replied. "I can't lie down all the time, and someone has to cook." "Martha." It was Lucas's voice. "Get back to bed at once." Mia looked at her husband. "See? They are trying to live a normal life despite everything." Robert sighed and pressed the doorbell. Lucas opened the door. When he saw the visitors, he froze in surprise. "Mrs. Wilson?" His gaze moved to Robert. Come in, please." The living room was small but neat. Family photos hung on the walls. One of them, a young woman with a baby in her arms. "That's my late wife, Catherine," Lucas said quietly, noticing Robert's look. "And Lucy, when she was a few months old. Dad, who's there?" Lucy peeked out of the kitchen, her eyes widening when she saw the guests. "Lucy, this is Mr. and Mrs. Wilson," Lucas introduced. "Mrs. Wilson is the woman I helped on the road last week." The girl smiled awkwardly. "Thank you for helping my dad in the hospital. We didn't know what to do." Robert felt something tighten in his chest. He remembered himself at her age, the same confusion when his father got sick, the same fear of losing a loved one. A cough came from the next room. "Marta!" Lucas rushed over. "I told you to lie down." Robert and Mia followed. An elderly woman was sitting on the bed, pale but with lively eyes. When she saw the guests, she tried to get up. "Please lie down." Mia came closer. "We won't be long." "You must be Mrs. Wilson," Martha smiled weakly. "Lucas has told me about you. Thank you for coming to the hospital that day." "Mom, you need to rest." Lucas tried to cover her with a blanket. "Stop fussing over me." Martha waved him off. "I'm not dead yet." "And you won't," Lucas said firmly. "We will find the money for the operation." Robert watched this scene, and memories came flooding back to him. His father was trying to hide his illness in the same way, joking to the last. "Don't worry, son," he said. "I'll dance at your wedding." But he didn't. "Lucy, tell the guests about your successes at school," Martha asked, interrupting his memories. The girl was embarrassed. Grandma, it's not important now. Why not? Mia interjected. We are curious. Lucy is the best student in the class, Martha said proudly. She dreams of becoming a doctor. Really? Robert was interested. And what kind of medicine are you interested in? Oncology, Lucy answered quietly. I want to help people, like the doctors who fought for my mom's life. The room fell silent. Robert looked at the photo on the nightstand. The same young woman from the first photo, but in a hospital bed, thin but smiling. Catherine fought to the last, Lucas said, catching his eye. 3 years. We sold everything we could, took out loans. But the cancer was stronger. And now, history is repeating itself, Lucy added bitterly. Only now, it's Grandma. Quiet, dear. Marta held out her hand to her granddaughter. Everything will be fine. Robert turned to the window, trying to hide his emotions. He saw a small garden with laundry drying on a clothesline, an old swing painted in bright colors, and several flower pots on the windowsill. You know, he suddenly said, my father was also a mechanic. Everyone turned to him. A small workshop on the outskirts of town, Robert continued. He worked from morning to night so I could go to college, always helping people, even when he was struggling to make ends meet. He looked at Lucas. When he got sick, I already had my own business. I could pay for the best treatment, but it was too late. He paused. Do you know what he said to me before he died? Son, money is good, but the most important thing is to stay human. Mia went over and took her husband's hand. She knew how rarely he talked about his father. Mr. Wilson, Lucas began, I don't know what Mrs. Wilson told you, but I'm not looking for charity. I know you're not, Robert interrupted. But sometimes help comes from places you don't expect, like that time on the road. He took his checkbook out of his pocket. How much do you need for the surgery? No, Lucas said firmly. I can't accept that kind of money. Yes, you can, Robert replied, just as firmly. Consider it an investment. In what? In the future, Robert looked at Lucy. In the fact that this girl can fulfill her dream of becoming a doctor, in her grandmother seeing her graduate. Marta coughed and everyone rushed to her side. I'm okay, she whispered, catching her breath. I'm just a little tired. We should go, Mia said, noticing that Martha had turned even paler. Robert put his business card on the table. Think about my offer, not for your sake, for theirs. When they went outside, it was already getting dark. Lucy's voice came from the house, saying something gently to her grandmother. You know, Robert said as he got into the car, your intuition never fails me. Mia smiled. That's why you married me. And it's the best investment I've ever made. They left, and Lucas stood on the porch for a long time, clutching the business card in his hand. He did not know that he would accept Robert's offer. Lucas sat in the kitchen staring at Robert Wilson's business card. For 3 days, he hadn't decided to call. Pride fought with despair as he heard his mother coughing from the next room. Dad, Lucy called softly as she entered the kitchen. Grandma's sick again. Lucas looked up, and his daughter looked exhausted. She hadn't slept much in the last few nights, caring for her grandmother. Fever again? He asked, already knowing the answer. Lucy nodded. 39, and the medicine is hardly helping. At that moment, a muffled moan came from Martha's room. Lucas jumped to his feet, but Lucy was already running there. Grandma, she shouted. Dad, hurry! Martha lay pale as a sheet, breathing heavily, her lips turning a bluish tint. Mom, hold on! Lucas grabbed the phone. I'm calling an ambulance. Don't, Martha whispered. There's no money. To hell with the money. I won't let you die. 20 minutes later, which seemed like an eternity, the ambulance arrived. The young doctor quickly examined Marta. Her condition is critical, he said. She needs immediate hospitalization. But the last time the hospital said, Lucas began. I know about your situation, the doctor interrupted. But now it's a matter of life and death. She won't last a day without surgery. Lucy sobbed. Dad, please, call Mr. Wilson. Lucas watched as the doctors put his mother on a stretcher. Martha looked so small and defenseless. Okay, he whispered, pulling out his business card. Okay. At the hospital, the same nurse as the last time met them. Mr. Green, she began. I know, Lucas interrupted her. Give me 5 minutes. He went to the corner of the hallway and dialed a number. His heart pounded as he listened to the rings. Robert Wilson here, he heard a businesslike voice say. Lucas took a deep breath. Mr. Wilson, this is Lucas Green. That mechanic. I remember you, Robert's voice softened. Is something wrong? My mother. Lucas felt his voice break. She's very sick. The doctors say she won't make it through the night without surgery. Silence reigned on the other end of the line. I realize I have no right to ask, Lucas quickly continued. But I'll give it all back. I'll sell the house, the car, anything. Where are you now? Robert interrupted him. At the Central Hospital. Wait there. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Lucas turned to Lucy, who was sitting by the door of the intensive care unit. He's coming, he said, hugging his daughter. Daddy, Lucy whispered. And if Grandma... Don't even think about it, Lucas interrupted her. She's strong. She'll make it. At that moment, quick footsteps came down the hall. It was Mia Wilson. I came as soon as Robert called, she said, coming up to them. The doctors are with her, Lucas answered. But they say, don't think about it now, Mia said softly. Robert is on his way. He'll take care of everything. She sat down next to Lucy and took the girl's hand. You know, when I had cancer, the doctors didn't give me much of a chance either. Lucy turned to her. You had cancer? 3 years ago, Mia nodded. It was the most difficult period in my life, but I survived, and your grandmother will too. How did you cope with it? Lucy asked quietly. Mia thought. You know, the hardest part was accepting help. I thought I had to be strong to cope on my own, but then I realized that true strength is not in refusing help, but in having the courage to accept it. Lucas listened to their conversation, and something inside him began to change. All his life he had tried to be strong, to carry everything himself. After Catherine's death, he forbade himself to show weakness because he had to be a support for his daughter and mother. But now... Robert Wilson walked quickly down the hall. He was followed by the chief physician. Everything is decided, Robert said briefly. The operation will begin in an hour. Mr. Wilson, I don't know how, Lucas began. Stop, Robert interrupted him. I don't want to hear about paying off the debt or selling the house. This isn't a loan, it's a bailout. But why? Lucas asked. You don't even know me. Robert looked him in the eye. Do you know what Mia said to me when she first told me about you? This man reminds me of your father. And she was right. The same pride, the same willingness to help others, even when it's hard for him. He paused. My father died because he was too embarrassed to ask for help. Don't let your pride kill your mother. Lucas felt tears streaming down his cheeks. For the first time in years, he allowed himself this weakness. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, both of you. Mia walked over to her husband and took his hand. We are simply returning the favor, a debt to those who once helped us. The doctor came out of the operating room. We are ready to start. The situation is complicated, but... He looked at Robert. We have the best specialists. Can I see her before the operation? Lucas asked. The doctor nodded. 5 minutes. Marta was lying on a gurney connected to various machines. When she saw her son and granddaughter, she smiled weakly. Don't worry about me, she whispered. I'll still be at Lucy's wedding. Lucas squeezed her hand. I will, Mom, I will. As the gurney was wheeled into the operating room, Lucas felt Lucy leaning against him. "Do you know what Mrs. Wilson told me?" she whispered. "That sometimes help comes from strangers, so that they can become friends." Lucas looked at the Wilson couple, who were waiting with them. "Your mom always said, 'Good things come back when you need them most,'" he said. I guess she was right. It was going to be a long night of waiting. But for the first time in a long time, Lucas did not feel alone in his struggle. Sometimes the hardest thing is to admit that you can't do it alone. And the most important thing is to have the courage to accept the outstretched hand of help. A year later, Lucas stood in front of the mirror in his new office, adjusting his tie. He still wasn't used to formal wear, but today was a special day, the anniversary of the opening of the renovated car repair shop. "Dad, are you ready?" Lucy peeked into the office. Everyone was already getting ready. Lucas looked around and saw his daughter looking all grown up in her new dress. She would soon be 16, and she knew for sure that she would be going to medical school. "Are you nervous?" she asked, noticing her father adjusting his tie again. "A little," Lucas admitted. "It's not every day you get to speak in front of so many people." "It'll be fine," Lucy came over and hugged him. "You are a successful businessman now." After Martha's successful surgery, Robert Wilson not only helped pay for the treatment, he offered a partnership. Now the small workshop has turned into a modern car service center that employs 15 people. "Lucas!" Martha appeared in the doorway, flushed and lively. "What are you hiding for? The guests are already arriving." Looking at my mother, it was hard to believe that a year ago she was on the verge of death. "I'm coming," Lucas answered. "You didn't have to stand in the kitchen all morning." Martha waved her hand. "Don't start again. I feel fine. And who else but me was supposed to prepare the holiday dinner?" At that moment, the sound of a car pulling up outside was heard. "Oh, it must be the Wilsons!" Lucy ran to meet the guests. Lucas came out of his office. The new workshop was spacious and bright. Large windows, modern equipment, and a separate lounge area for clients. All of this seemed unrealistic a year ago. "Lucas!" Mia Wilson came in holding a huge bouquet. "You look great in your suit." Robert followed her in. "Are you ready for the big day?" "More or less," Lucas replied, shaking his hand. "Although speeches are not my thing." "Just speak from the heart," Robert advised. "By the way, have you seen today's reports? The workshop's profits for the last quarter exceeded all expectations." "Don't start talking about business now," Mia interrupted them. "Today is a day for celebration." Gradually, the room filled with people. Lucas noticed an elderly woman among the guests whom he had once given a free ride to the hospital. Now she regularly brought her car to his workshop for a checkup. "May I have your attention?" Robert tapped his glass. It was time for the official part. Everyone fell silent. Lucas stepped forward, feeling his heart pounding. "A year ago," he began, "I was standing on a desert road in the rain, trying to help a stranger with her car. I didn't know then that this chance encounter would change my entire life." He looked at Mia, who was smiling through her tears. Sometimes the most important moments of our lives start with simple decisions. The decision to stop and help. The decision to lend a hand to someone who needs it. The decision to accept help when you are in trouble yourself. Martha came over and took his hand. Lucy stood on the other side. "This car service center is not just a business," Lucas continued. "It's a symbol that miracles do happen, that good things can be returned, that strangers can become family." He looked at Robert. "Thank you for believing in me, for giving me not just money but an opportunity to start over, for teaching me how to do business honestly and help others." Then he turned his gaze to Mia. "Thank you for your kindness and support, for being there in the most difficult moments, for showing us that sometimes the strongest act is to admit that you need help." Lucy leaned against him. And now I can definitely become a doctor, right, Daddy? You will, sweetheart, Lucas replied. Thanks to our friends, all doors are now open. Martha wiped away her tears. I told you I'd go to your graduation. Everyone laughed. Robert raised his glass. To a new chapter in your life, to a friendship born from a chance meeting, to the future. After the official part, the guests split into groups. Martha treated everyone to her specialty pies. Lucy told Mia about her success in preparing for medical school, and Robert discussed business expansion plans with his employees. Lucas went outside to catch his breath. The sun was setting, painting the sky golden. Dozens of cars were parked in the parking lot, from luxury foreign cars to old pickup trucks. His shop now served customers from all walks of life, and he was proud to provide the same quality service to everyone. What are you thinking about? Robert appeared next to me. I'm thinking about that night on the road, Lucas replied. You know, I almost drove by. I was tired, worried about my mother. But I stopped. Yes, I stopped, and that changed everything. Robert put his hand on his shoulder. Do you know what struck me the most when I first came to your house? Not the poverty, not the problems, but the way you stuck together. You supported each other. That's something that money can't buy. And now our family is bigger, Lucas smiled. Lucy peeked out of the door. Dad, Grandma wants to take a picture together. They went back inside. Martha was already arranging everyone for the photo. Okay, Robert and Mia stand next to Lucas. Lucy, you're in the front. I'll sit in the chair. The photographer set up the camera. Smile, 3 or 4. The flash captured a moment that later took pride of place in the albums of both families. In the photo, everyone was smiling, not staged, but sincerely, like people who are truly happy. Later that evening, when most of the guests had left, the two families sat in the cozy lounge. Lucy was showing Mia her biology grades. Martha was sharing her signature pie recipe with Robert, and Lucas was just watching them, feeling his heart overflow with gratitude. You know, Mia said to him quietly, when you helped me on the road, I prayed that I could find a way to repay you. But now I realize that it was not just gratitude, it was fate. Fate? Lucas asked again. Yes, she smiled. Sometimes she brings people together for a reason, to remind us that there is still room for miracles in the world, for kindness, for selfless help. Lucas looked at the photo of his late wife on the shelf. Catherine always said that goodness comes back when you need it most. She was a wise woman, Robert said. And you know what? She would be proud of you today.